close your eyes. And let's drift back to the thought that death is simply the deepest sleep. You felt it already, many times, without even realizing it. That moment when you slip past the edges of dreaming and dissolve into nothing. No dreams, no awareness, no ticking of the clock. Just a blank softness. You've done it thousands of nights, surrendering without resistance, and each time you woke up fine. Death is like that, except you don't wake. And you don't even notice not waking. You probably won't survive this, at least not in the way you think of survival. But isn't that strangely okay? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying there, feeling your body's weight sink into the mattress, your breath slowing. Imagine how it feels when you're just about to fall asleep. The edges of your thoughts blur, the day slips away, and you stop caring about anything. That transition, that's your brain letting go. Every night, it rehearses a kind of tiny death. Neurologists even call certain sleep phases local sleep, because bits of your brain shut down while others still hum. And when you hit deep, dreamless sleep, awareness is completely offline. You weren't scared the last time you entered that void, were you? You didn't even notice it. Here's a comforting little mainstream fact. When you're in that deepest stage of sleep, slow wave sleep, your body releases hormones that repair tissue, your brain clears toxins, and your cells renew themselves. You're not gone exactly, but you're about as close to death as life gets while still breathing. No fear, no drama, just a quiet blackout that feels shorter than a blink. The quirky part? Some animals, like dolphins, never fully let their brain sleep. They keep half of it awake to watch for predators. Yet even they experience micro moments of full rest, proof that nature trusts the soft reset. Scientists still argue whether consciousness is even continuous or just a flickering illusion that turns off and on, like frames in a movie. If that's true, then you already disappear between each moment and simply don't notice. Death might be nothing more than the last gap between frames, stretched forever, but it wouldn't feel forever, because there's no you left to feel it. Picture the last time you fell asleep after a long, exhausting day. You didn't even remember the moment it happened. You didn't fight it, you just let go. Death is that same letting go, minus the alarm clock on the other side. Imagine slipping so deeply into calm that even time itself gives up on you. No struggle, no strange tunnel of light you're forced to walk through. Just the softest fade, like a candle going out after the wick is gone. And here's the funny thing. Some people think they fear death, but really, they fear the idea of dying. The process, the loss, the unknown. But death itself, it's the one thing you won't have to endure. You don't remember the start of your life and you won't notice the end. You'll simply not be there. It's strangely merciful, isn't it? Like the universe saying, you've done enough, rest now. You might be tempted to clutch at wakefulness, to imagine you'll scream into the void. But look back at every single night of your life. Did you ever stay awake forever? No. Your body always won. Even when you were afraid, even when you swore you'd stay up all night, sleep took you. It always does. That's what death is, an irresistible ease. Think about how newborn babies sleep almost constantly, as if life is too much stimulation to handle all at once. Death is just the reverse. After all that stimulation, all that thought and worry, you finally go back to stillness. a full circle, perfectly symmetrical. And if you're wondering, but what about dreams? Dreams are just little sparks of residual brain noise. Death is deeper than that. It's the dreamless part, the dark ocean you fall into before your mind even tries to paint pictures. You've been there already, many times. You just don't remember. So let yourself imagine it. That moment your thoughts thin out. That moment your body feels heavy and strangely safe. That moment when you can't tell where you end and the darkness begins. That's the template. That's the rehearsal you've practiced every single night. And remember, even in the sleep you know, you don't fear the absence. You only notice it when it's over, when you wake and think, oh, I was out. But in death, there's no waking, no return. So there's no, oh. It's the kindest kind of ignorance. Maybe you've had those nights where you woke from a nap and couldn't tell if it was 5 minutes or 5 hours. That's time dissolving. That's how it feels. No timeline, no pressure, no ticking. Death is that multiplied by infinity, but without the part where you wake up confused. So let your breath slow. Let your muscles unclench. You've already mastered this. Death is not a stranger. It's the deepest, softest sleep you've ever known. You've already died countless times without realizing it. Think about it. There's no single, unbroken you moving from childhood to this exact moment. The person you were at 5, completely gone. The teenage version of you, also gone. The cells that made up your body back then have been shed, replaced, recycled. Your memories of those years feel like they belong to someone else sometimes, don't they? That's because, in a quiet biological sense, they do. Death isn't one sudden event at the end of your life. It's been happening in tiny, merciful doses all along. Your body is in a constant state of renewal. Mainstream fact. Every few years, most of your cells are replaced. Skin cells, gone in weeks. The lining of your stomach, recycled in just a few days. Even your skeleton, the thing you think of as permanent, completely rebuilds itself about every decade. That means the bones you have right now aren't the same ones you had during your first kiss, your first heartbreak, your first anything. The quirky tidbit? The only cells that truly stick around your whole life are some in your brain, which carry fragments of memory, like tiny librarians keeping a very selective archive. Scientists still argue whether the you that wakes up each day is genuinely the same consciousness as yesterday, or just a perfect copy running on updated hardware. If memory is malleable and your body is endlessly replaced, what exactly survives? Maybe nothing does. Maybe each day a new version of you quietly steps into the role, believing it's continuous. In that sense, you've died and been reborn more times than you can count. Each version just a little different from the last. Think back to who you were as a child. Can you even recognize that person fully? Would you make the same choices, laugh at the same jokes, cry at the same things? Probably not. And that means the essence of that child is gone. You can remember bits and pieces, but that version no longer exists in the world except as a faded echo. Strange how easily we accept those micro-deaths. And what about the parts of yourself you've deliberately let go of? Bad habits, old heartbreaks, outdated beliefs. They all died quietly in the background while you kept moving forward. Remember the first time you thought, I'll never get over this. And then, one day, you realized you already had. That was a death too. A gentle, necessary one. Here's a small, almost humorous truth. By the time you finish this sentence, millions of your cells will have died. Tiny casualties of normal life. But does it feel like a loss? No. You didn't even notice. Death on that scale is woven so smoothly into living that it doesn't seem scary at all. Now, picture a snake shedding its skin. It doesn't mourn the old layer. It simply slithers forward, lighter, renewed. You're not so different. The self you believe in is more of a flowing river than a fixed statue, always moving, never quite the same twice. The you who started listening to this, already gone, replaced by the you hearing this now. It's strangely liberating when you think of it that way. If you zoom out even further, your DNA, your so-called blueprint, is also a record of countless tiny deaths and rebirths. You inherited strands from ancestors you've never met, from people who lived, loved, and were eventually forgotten. They're gone, but little fragments of them survive as you. You're living proof that death doesn't erase everything. It just rearranges it. Think about all the versions of yourself that could have been. The you who stayed in that old relationship. The you who took that other job. The you who said yes instead of no. Each of those possibilities died the moment you made a choice. And yet, here you are, still whole, still here, carrying 1,000 silent endings inside you. And maybe you felt it in your dreams, that strange sense of being someone else, somewhere else, with no memory of real life. Dreams are like quick visits to other selves, other timelines, that vanish without ceremony. They're little deaths of identity too, and you don't fight them. You just wake up and move on. So when you think of death as a single, giant leap into the unknown, remember, it's really just the last in a long series of tiny dissolutions. You've been practicing since the day you were born. Death isn't new. It's just the natural next step. And here's the softest part. The person who fears death right now, the you listening, breathing, is not the same one who will experience it. That final version will be quieter, maybe more tired, maybe more at peace. And when the moment comes, it won't feel like you are dying. It will feel like you are simply done. Like putting down a book you've been reading for a long time and realizing the story has already ended beautifully. So let yourself breathe a little easier. You've already died so many times, and it's always been okay. It will be okay again. The universe will recycle you. That's not wishful thinking. It's how everything works. Nothing truly disappears. It just changes form. The atoms that make up your body were forged in ancient stars billions of years ago. Long before you existed, they floated through space, collided with other particles, became part of oceans, mountains, plants, animals. Right now, you're a brief arrangement of cosmic dust. And when you die, that arrangement will simply loosen and scatter back into the world. Mainstream fact: every single atom in your body has been reused countless times. The iron in your blood was once inside a dying star. The calcium in your bones might have belonged to a prehistoric fish. Even the water in your cells has passed through clouds, rivers, and living creatures for eons. Quirky tidbit? Statistically, you're probably carrying at least one atom that once belonged to Cleopatra, or to an ancient tree that shaded dinosaurs. You're already connected to everything that's ever lived. Scientists still argue whether consciousness itself could also recycle in some unknown way, whether it's a unique byproduct of the brain or part of a larger field we haven't mapped yet. If it's the latter, maybe your awareness doesn't end, but simply blends back into something bigger. But even if it doesn't, your physical self will still live on, just rearranged. Imagine it. Your body becomes part of the soil, nourishing roots. Maybe those roots grow into a tree, and that tree provides oxygen for someone else to breathe. Or perhaps your atoms drift into the ocean, feeding plankton, feeding fish, feeding life in an endless loop. One day, your atoms might even fuel a spark in another star. You won't know it, but you'll still be there. Think about how comforting that is. You've never really been yours. You're on loan from the universe, borrowing this particular shape for a short while. When it's time to give it back, it won't be a loss. It'll be a return, like finally taking off a costume you've worn long enough. There's even a beautiful name for this in ecology: the nutrient cycle. Nothing goes to waste. A fallen leaf doesn't mourn the branch it left. It breaks down, feeds the soil, and becomes part of new growth. Death isn't destruction, it's redistribution. Maybe you've walked through a forest in autumn, the ground soft with decaying leaves. It smells rich, earthy, alive. That scent is proof of recycling, of the endless exchange between what was and what will be. Your body will join that same quiet process. No drama, no panic, just a soft unraveling into the next phase of the cycle. And if you zoom out even further, you realize you've been part of this cosmic recycling program from the start. You didn't create yourself. You were assembled by chance, by biology, by time. The elements that shaped you already had an infinite history before you showed up. And when you go, they'll keep moving, endlessly repurposed. Here's a strange, slightly funny fact. Right now, you're breathing in the particles exhaled by other people, maybe even people on the opposite side of the planet. The air you take in has been through countless lungs before yours. That means, in a way, you're already sharing pieces of yourself with strangers and receiving pieces of them back. Death is just a more complete version of what's already happening with every breath. And think of water, the ultimate traveler. The same molecules that once filled ancient seas are the ones you drink from a glass today. They've been through clouds, rivers, glaciers, maybe even the tear of a bird millions of years ago. When you're gone, the water in you will simply continue its journey. You'll become rain or mist or ocean spray on someone else's skin. Some cultures understood this deeply. They didn't see death as an end, but as a return to the great cycle. Indigenous traditions often described it as going back to the earth, to the ancestors, to the sky. They weren't wrong. On a molecular level, that's exactly what happens. And if you've ever planted something, maybe a flower, a tree, a tiny herb, you've seen it firsthand. Old things feed new things. Compost becomes growth. Death becomes life over and over. That's the quiet promise of the universe. Nothing is wasted. Even stars obey this. When they die, they explode into supernovae, scattering elements that will form new planets, new suns, new possibilities. That means the death of one thing makes the existence of another possible. In that sense, your death isn't an erasure. It's a gift. So maybe you can start to see death differently, not as a void swallowing you, but as an exchange. You've borrowed these atoms for a little while, arranged them into thoughts, feelings, experiences. When you're done, you'll give them back, and they'll help build something new. Imagine someone 100 years from now, breathing in an atom that once held a place in your lung, or sitting under a tree that grew from soil enriched by you. You won't be gone. You'll be everywhere, quietly woven into the fabric of whatever comes next. So don't think of death as an ending. Think of it as recycling at the highest, most elegant level. The universe doesn't throw anything away. It just reshapes it, including you. You won't experience nothingness, and that's the most ironic comfort of all. The thing people fear most about death, that vast, empty void, is something you can't actually feel. To experience nothingness, there would have to be a you left to experience it. But by the time awareness fades, there's no observer remaining. It's like trying to imagine what it was like before you were born. You simply can't, because there's no memory, no self, no frame of reference. Mainstream fact: neuroscience shows that when the brain shuts down, perception doesn't just fade to black in a way you notice. It stops altogether. There's no sensation of time passing, no boredom, no waiting. Quirky tidbit: even during general anesthesia, people describe the experience as instantaneous. You blink and you're suddenly awake, as if no time existed in between. That's the closest living glimpse of non-awareness you'll ever have. Scientists still argue whether there's even a thing to call nothingness at all. Some physicists say the vacuum of space isn't truly empty but teeming with quantum fluctuations. Philosophers debate whether non-existence can even be conceptualized by a mind that only knows existence. In other words, you can't really fear nothingness because you can't truly imagine it. It's beyond what a living brain can grasp. Think of it this way. Do you remember anything from the years before you were born? No. Did it bother you back then? Of course not. There was no you to worry about it. Death is just the same, slipping back into the state you were in before life began. You didn't suffer in that absence before, and you won't suffer in it after. And here's an oddly funny truth. Nothingness is actually the most peaceful state imaginable. Why? Because there's no you left to stress, regret, or ache. No waiting rooms, no eternal boredom, no endless stretch of blackness. That would imply a conscious mind stuck observing it. But death doesn't trap you in a dark box. It erases the box, and the you that might be inside it. Imagine falling asleep so deeply that you skip even the dream stage. One moment you're aware, the next you're gone. Hours later, you wake up, and it feels instant. If there were no waking up, you'd never know the difference. That's what the end feels like. No gap, no lingering. Just nothing, in the most painless, unnoticeable way possible. You might picture it like turning off a light switch, but even that's too active. It's more like the bulb never existed at all. 1 second there's glow, and the next, there's simply no reference point. Some people fear they'll be trapped in endless darkness, thinking forever, unable to move on. But that's not how it works. Darkness itself is still a something, an image your brain creates. Without a functioning brain, even darkness disappears. There's just the absence of experience. And maybe that's why the idea of nothing feels so uncomfortable. We keep trying to fill it with images, a void, a black screen, a silent cave. But those are all somethings. Real nothingness can't be pictured because picturing requires a mind, and the mind won't be there. Here's a small story-like fact. Some people who survive near-death experiences say they felt pulled out of time, or felt like nothing was happening anymore. But notice how they're describing it in hindsight. They only remember leaving awareness. They don't remember being in non-awareness, because there's nothing to remember. Even in ordinary life, you've already tasted this. Ever fainted or been knocked out? There's no memory of the gap. It's just gone, like a missing reel of film. One moment you're here, the next you're waking up, with no sense of the time in between. Now imagine fainting and never waking. That's it. It's not terrifying. It's simply not anything at all. So when you picture your afterlife as an endless blank, you're still imagining being there to see it, but you won't be there. The part of you that says I will dissolve before it can panic. Fear needs awareness, and awareness will have already let go. Even time itself won't exist for you anymore. No hours, no days, no eternity. Eternity only matters to something still counting. Without you, there's no clock. And here's the gentle twist. While you won't notice your absence, the world will keep rearranging around the pieces you leave behind. Your atoms will move on. Your memories will live briefly in the minds of others, then fade. But you won't miss any of it, because missing requires a self, and that self will have already gone quiet. So when your mind tries to panic about the idea of forever nothing, remind it, there's no forever to experience. There's no watcher left to even know it happened, just like before you were born, just like deep, dreamless sleep. It's not a punishment. It's the purest kind of relief. And that, in a strange way, is the ultimate kindness of death. It doesn't trap you in an empty room. It erases the need for rooms at all. Fear exists only in life. It needs a you to feel it. Without a self, fear has nowhere to land, no body to clench, no mind to spiral. That's why, when you unravel in death, fear dissolves with you. The thing you're afraid of, the end, is the very moment that removes the ability to be afraid. It's a paradox that actually brings comfort. Fear cannot follow you where you're going. Mainstream fact, fear is just a survival mechanism. It lives in the amygdala, that tiny almond-shaped part of your brain that's always scanning for threats. It's useful when you're avoiding predators or tripping over sharp corners. But once the brain stops, the circuitry shuts down. Quirky tidbit: even in life, fear can be tricked. Like how you can feel terrified watching a horror movie, yet part of you knows you're perfectly safe. It shows how fragile and situational fear really is. Scientists still argue whether fear is hardwired more by nature or shaped by nurture, whether it's purely biological or deeply learned. But they all agree on one thing: fear is tied to life. It's about keeping you alive a little longer. When there's no alive left to protect, fear has no job. Think about the last time you were truly afraid. Maybe a close call while driving, or a loud noise in the dark. Your heart raced, your breath shortened, your body flooded with adrenaline. Fear is loud, it's urgent, it screams, "Do something." But death is the opposite. There's no doing left. No body to react, no heart to pound, no brain to flood with alarms. So even if the thought of death makes you anxious now, the actual moment won't. It's like worrying about falling asleep and then realizing you're already asleep. Here's a simple truth you can feel even now. Fear is temporary. No matter how intense it gets, it always passes. You've already survived every wave of fear you've ever felt, and each time it faded back into calm. Death is just the final permanent fade, so soft you won't even notice it arriving. And maybe you've seen it happen with others. Someone in their final moments often stops looking scared. There's a strange clarity that comes over them. Hospice nurses even say that at the very end, people relax. It's as if the mind, sensing the inevitable, lets go of the panic and allows peace in. Nature designed it that way, because fear serves no purpose past a certain point. Even in the animal world, this is true. When prey animals realize escape is impossible, their bodies release natural chemicals that calm them, almost like anesthesia. It's called tonic immobility, a mercy built into biology. Your body knows when to stop fighting. And think of this. Fear itself is a byproduct of your imagination. It's about what might happen, not what's happening right now. But death doesn't have a later. It's not an event waiting on the calendar. It's the moment the calendar stops mattering. So what exactly would there be left to imagine? Nothing. There's even a little humor in how stubbornly fear tries to cling. It's like a smoke alarm that keeps beeping even when the fire is long gone. But when the power's cut, the alarm goes silent. That's what death does to fear. It pulls the plug. You've probably noticed this in mini versions during your life. Remember a time you dreaded something, a big exam, a breakup, a painful conversation, and then, once it happened, the fear was gone instantly. The anticipation was worse than the event. Death is the same. The anxiety belongs to the living self, the one imagining scenarios. The self that actually dies won't have the capacity for dread. And here's the comforting part you might not have thought about. All the pain, the worry, the tightness that fear brings, they're symptoms of being alive. And they vanish with life. Pain can only be felt by a functioning nervous system. Worry only exists in a mind that's still spinning. When those systems stop, so does everything unpleasant they produce. So really, death is the cure for fear, not the cause. You can't suffer the thing you're scared of, because the very thing that suffers won't exist anymore. Maybe you've seen someone fall asleep mid-sentence, like their brain simply gave up on staying awake. Fear is like that too. It might chatter and resist, but eventually it quiets itself, slipping into stillness. And think about this. You've already been without fear before. In the deep, dreamless parts of sleep, there's no anxiety, no past, no future, just nothing. It's so natural you never even notice. Death is like that, except it's final, so you never wake to think, oh, I was gone. So when your mind races with questions, what if it hurts? What if it's scary? Remind yourself that the one asking those questions won't be there at the finish line. Death isn't something you endure. It's the exact opposite. It's the absence of enduring anything at all. The truth is, fear belongs to life and it stays there. It doesn't follow you beyond. When the curtain falls, the stage goes quiet, not with screaming, but with relief. Death gives life meaning. Without an ending, there'd be no urgency, no sweetness, no reason to savor anything. It's like a book with no final page. You'd lose interest because the story would drag on endlessly. The fact that life is finite is what makes it precious. You know deep down you only have so many mornings, so many sunsets, so many chances to laugh until your stomach hurts. That's why you care. Mainstream fact. Psychologists talk about something called mortality salience, the awareness that you're going to die. Surprisingly, studies show it often makes people live with more gratitude and purpose. Quirky tidbit? In some experiments, even subtle reminders of death, like walking past a cemetery, can make people more generous and kind. It's as if your brain whispers, "Hey, this doesn't last forever. Make it count." Scientists still argue whether meaning is something we create or something we discover, but they agree on this. If life stretched on forever, the weight of each moment would shrink. Without endings, beginnings lose their magic. Imagine if you could eat your favorite meal an infinite number of times. Eventually, it wouldn't taste like anything. Scarcity is what makes it delicious. Think about how you cherish a vacation more because it ends. If you lived in a perfect paradise forever, even paradise would feel dull. It's the limit, the ticking clock, that makes you pay attention. Death is the boundary that frames the picture of your life, giving it shape and focus. Look at a blooming flower. It's beautiful because it won't last. If it stayed in perfect bloom forever, you'd stop noticing. The same is true of people, of moments, of experiences. Their impermanence is their glow. Maybe you've had this thought before. If I only had one day left, I'd do everything differently. That's death giving life its clarity. Knowing time runs out makes you choose. It makes you love harder, forgive faster, speak truer. Even in the small scale, endings give things meaning. Think of the last day of school, or the final episode of a beloved show. The end hurts a little, but it also makes you appreciate the journey more. Death is the final episode of your story, and knowing it's coming makes every previous scene feel richer. There's even a strange humor in it. Imagine if no one ever died. This planet would be absurdly crowded. There'd be no room for new lives, new stories. You'd be stuck in an endless rerun with the same people forever. No growth, no change, no reason to start fresh. Death, in a quiet way, makes room for life. And here's the gentle truth. You don't need eternity to matter. You only need now. A single day can hold more meaning than 1,000 years if you live it fully. Death reminds you to pay attention to the small things, a shared smile, the warmth of sunlight on your face, the sound of rain at night. There's even a term poets love, memento mori. Remember that you must die. It's not meant to depress you. It's meant to wake you up, to remind you that your time is rare and therefore valuable. Think about a piece of music. It's beautiful because it ends. Each note is precious because it's fleeting, melting into the next. If it just droned on forever, it wouldn't be music at all. It would be noise. Life is a song, and death is the final note that makes the melody complete. Even stars understand this. They burn brightly for a time, then collapse or explode, seeding the universe with new possibilities. Their endings create space for new beginnings. Without their deaths, we wouldn't even be here. So maybe instead of seeing death as a thief, you can see it as an artist, a sculptor that shapes the contours of life, giving it definition. Without it, everything would be formless. Remember the last time you watched a sunset and felt a pang because it was fading? That pang was love. It's the same with life. The fact that it slips away makes you hold it closer. And even if the end feels unfair sometimes, too soon, too abrupt, it still carries a quiet mercy. It says, you don't have to do this forever. You get to rest. You get to hand the story over to the next voices, the next hearts. So yes, death is the final chapter. But without a last page, the story wouldn't mean anything. It would just keep going until it blurred into nothing. Death, in its own silent way, is what makes every word, every moment, worth reading. Everyone you love will join you. That might sound eerie at first, but it's not meant to be. It's a quiet reminder that in the grand stretch of time, no one stays apart forever. Right now, life feels like a long wait between arrivals and departures, but in eternity, the gap between your death and theirs is barely a blink. Whether they go before you or after you, all those threads eventually meet in the same stillness. Mainstream fact: every human who has ever lived shares the same fate. The billions who came before you all met death, and the billions who come after will too. In that way, it's the most universal experience possible. Quirky tidbit? Even some cultures celebrate death anniversaries like birthdays, as if the person simply moved to another room and will eventually be joined by everyone else. Scientists still argue whether time is linear at all, or whether past, present, and future exist simultaneously in ways we can't fully perceive. If that's true, then the people you've loved and lost are not really gone. They're simply in another slice of the timeline. From their perspective, they might still be laughing with you, holding your hand, sharing ordinary days. Think about how strange time already feels in life. Years can pass in what feels like a moment. Days can stretch endlessly, then vanish in memory. At the end of it all, the entire span of your life, every friendship, every love, will seem short. So short that the space between your goodbye and theirs won't even register. And isn't it comforting to know that no one you love gets left behind forever? The very people you ache for, the ones you can't imagine being without, will also rest. Not because it's tragic, but because it's simply what happens. Death reunites everyone, not in some dramatic afterlife necessarily, but in the fact that all roads lead to the same quiet. Picture the last time you were separated from someone you care about. Maybe they moved away, or you lost touch. At first, the distance felt unbearable, but eventually you adjusted, and when you saw them again, it was as if no time had passed. Death is like that too, except the reunion isn't about picking up where you left off. It's about sharing the same stillness beyond all that waiting. There's an odd sweetness in realizing that no matter how different people's lives are, they all end the same way. Kings, poets, farmers, friends, they all step off the stage. No one stays standing to watch the curtain fall alone. And maybe you felt this on some deep, wordless level at funerals. There's sorrow, yes, but also a sense of inevitability. As if a part of you recognizes, I'll be there too. And so will everyone I know. That's not despair, that's connection. Even the people you've loved and lost early, the ones whose absence feels like an open wound, are not truly separate. Their atoms are still here, scattered in the same air you breathe, the same earth you walk on. They're already part of you in ways you can't see, and one day you'll join them in that same redistribution. Here's a slightly funny thought. If death didn't come for everyone, imagine the loneliness of outliving all the people you care about. Immortality sounds tempting, until you realize it would mean endless goodbyes with no end to the ache. Mortality, in its quiet fairness, keeps the circle unbroken. And maybe, if you believe in something beyond, the idea of reunion takes on an even softer glow. Countless stories, near-death experiences, and ancient traditions suggest that love doesn't just vanish, it lingers. It threads through whatever lies beyond. Even if you're unsure about that, the hope itself is comforting. But even without mystical promises, there's peace in knowing that death doesn't leave anyone behind for long. In the vastness of time, all separations are temporary. The most unbearable grief will one day soften, not because you forget, but because the wait ends. Remember the first time you realized someone you loved had died. The shock, the hollow feeling. It seemed impossible that they were truly gone. And yet, life kept moving, carrying you toward the same horizon. Every step you've taken since has been a quiet approach toward where they are. And every step your living loved ones take brings them closer too. There's even an invisible kindness in that. Death isn't selective. It doesn't take one and leave another stranded forever. It's not a thief, it's a tide. It comes for all, bringing every story to rest in the same ocean. So when you feel the ache of missing someone, remember, you're not really moving farther from them. You're moving toward the same place they've already reached. And when you arrive, there will be no waiting, no loneliness, no more longing for what's absent. Death, in its own strange way, is the ultimate reunion. You're already part of something eternal. Long before you were you, the matter and energy that make up your body existed. They've always been here, endlessly rearranged, taking on different forms. And long after your individual story ends, those same pieces will keep flowing, moving through the universe in ways you can't even imagine. Death doesn't erase you. It simply shifts your shape. Mainstream fact: energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. That's one of the most fundamental laws of physics. The calories you eat, the heat you give off, the very spark of your heartbeat, all of it is energy borrowed from somewhere else. Quirky tidbit? Right now, the exact atoms in your body were once part of ancient stardust, volcanic rock, or maybe even a single grain of sand on a long-forgotten shore. Scientists still argue whether consciousness itself is just a temporary arrangement of neurons or part of something larger, a universal field of awareness. But even if it is purely temporary, the raw ingredients of you are not. They're ancient, eternal in a way that has nothing to do with personal identity. Think about the sky at night. Every star you see is made of the same basic elements that make you. Hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen. They're cosmic building blocks, endlessly reused. In a way, you're already scattered across the universe. You're in the stars, the oceans, the air. You're not separate from the universe. You're an expression of it. Imagine it like a wave on the ocean. For a while, the wave looks like its own thing, unique, moving with its own shape and rhythm. But it was never separate from the ocean. When it crashes back, it doesn't stop existing. It just returns to what it always was. You're the same. Right now, you're a wave, briefly distinct. Death is the moment you return to the ocean. And maybe you've already felt glimpses of this connection in small ways. Standing in a forest and feeling tiny under the trees. Looking up at the Milky Way and realizing how vast it all is. Or even just watching your breath on a cold day, knowing the air you exhale will mix with everything else. There's comfort in realizing you were never truly separate. There's also a quiet permanence in the things you leave behind. The sound waves of your voice travel outward forever, growing fainter, but never fully disappearing. The heat you give off, the energy you put into the world, those ripples don't stop. In some form, they continue. Even your thoughts and choices have echoes. The kindness you show someone might shift their day, which shifts someone else's, which keeps rippling outward. Those effects don't end with you. They just branch out into new patterns. Here's an oddly beautiful fact. When you look at the night sky, some of the stars you're seeing have already died. Their light is still traveling, still reaching you, even though their core burned out long ago. In a way, that's how you'll be too. Parts of you will keep shining long after your wave has gone back to the ocean. And it's not just poetic, it's literal. Your atoms have been part of countless other lives and will be again. The carbon that makes up your muscles might fuel a tree someday. The oxygen in your body will swirl back into the atmosphere. Even the tiny traces of you will be part of something bigger. So when you think about death, remember, it's not a vanishing, it's a returning. You're not being erased. You're being rearranged into the tapestry you've always belonged to. Think of it like this. You are the universe noticing itself for a little while. Through your eyes, your thoughts, your laughter, the cosmos has a brief moment of self-awareness. And when that moment ends, it doesn't mean the universe stops. It just shifts its focus elsewhere. There's even a strange peace in realizing you're too big to ever truly be lost. You're made of the same particles that have been here since the beginning of time. You can't fall out of existence. You just fall back into everything else. And if you let yourself feel it, there's a soft, grounding relief in knowing you're part of something that doesn't end. The trees, the rivers, the stars, they were here before you. They'll be here after you. And they're made of the same stuff as you. You're not separate from eternity. You're already inside it. So when death comes, it's not taking you anywhere new. It's simply letting you be what you've always been, part of an endless whole, the ocean, the stardust, the great, quiet everything. There is no right way to die. The universe doesn't judge. It doesn't hold up a checklist of how gracefully you handled it, how prepared you were, or whether you earned a peaceful ending. It just quietly closes each chapter in the same neutral, inevitable way. In nature, everything simply stops when it's time, without ceremony, without shame. Mainstream fact. In the natural world, there's an astonishing variety of endings. Some animals slip away calmly, others fight fiercely, and some just stop, as if a switch flipped. There's no single pattern, no universal ideal, quirky tidbit. There are creatures like certain jellyfish that technically never age, but still succumb to injury or the environment. Even the so-called immortal can't escape eventual change. Scientists still argue whether there's an evolutionary reason for how we die, or if it's just the result of entropy, the slow unraveling of complex systems. But one thing is clear, there's no cosmic scoreboard. No one grades your death. Think about how much pressure people put on the idea of a good death. We imagine it should be calm, surrounded by loved ones, maybe with soft music playing. But life rarely follows a script. Some people go suddenly, some linger, some go quietly in their sleep, others in moments of chaos. And yet, in the end, the result is the same. Stillness. There's actually a soft relief in knowing there's no perfect way to exit. You can't fail at dying. Whether it's messy or peaceful, expected or surprising, the destination is the same. The universe doesn't care if you are ready or not. It takes you with the same quiet impartiality it gives to everyone else. Think of leaves falling in autumn. Some drift slowly, spinning gently to the ground. Others are torn off abruptly by wind. But in the end, they all return to the same earth. There's no wrong way to fall. And maybe you've already felt a tiny version of this. Remember the times you let go of something reluctantly, an old home, an old job, even an old version of yourself. At first, you wanted it to be neat and meaningful, but life didn't cooperate. And eventually, you realized the meaning didn't come from how it ended. It just came from the fact that it ended. Death is like that too. Here's something oddly comforting. When people talk about the last moments of life, they often say the details blur. Even if there's pain or fear, it fades fast. What remains is a strange, almost serene detachment. Hospice workers describe it as a softening, as if the body knows the fight is over. And for those who leave suddenly, there's no time to dwell, no slow unraveling of thoughts. It's just a before and after. Like a candle snuffed out. 1 second the flame is there, the next it's not. Quick or slow, peaceful or chaotic, the ending itself is always silent. Even cultures that imagine judgment after death often agree on one thing. The universe doesn't punish you for the mechanics of how you die. A storm, a sickness, an accident. They're not moral verdicts. They're just life doing what it's always done, moving on. And think of how freeing it is to let go of the idea that you have to earn a certain kind of death. You don't have to be brave. You don't have to be wise. You don't have to prepare a perfect goodbye. It will happen whether you're ready or not, and that's okay. Even in the plant world, endings aren't neat. A tree might stand for centuries and then topple suddenly in a storm. It doesn't agonize over whether it fell correctly. It just returns to the soil, feeding what comes next. So if your mind tries to bargain, I want it to be peaceful, I want to be ready, remind yourself it doesn't really matter. The experience will last a breath, then vanish. The story will close with the same quiet finality, no matter how the last line is written. And here's the gentlest truth. Even if the lead up to death is imperfect, the moment itself erases imperfection. Whatever noise or struggle comes before is washed away in an instant. There's no lingering shame, no aftertaste, just release. So don't feel pressured to imagine the right scenario. Don't tie your peace of mind to whether you'll have time to say goodbye or whether it will happen well. Life doesn't make promises like that, and it doesn't have to, because the ending itself is always the same, and it's always enough. When the curtain falls, no one measures whether it fell with grace or stumbled down awkwardly. It simply falls, and the play is over. That's all. So breathe. However it happens, it will be okay. Consciousness might continue in unknown ways. This isn't a promise, just a possibility. A small, curious question mark that even science hasn't closed. For all we know about the brain and the body, awareness itself is still one of the biggest mysteries. Where does it truly come from? Does it vanish completely? Or could it shift into something we can't yet imagine? Mainstream fact: neuroscientists can map brain activity, track thoughts to neurons, and even see when the brain shuts down at death. But they still can't explain why those electrical signals create experience, the vivid, personal feeling of being you. That's called the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains unsolved. Quirky tidbit: some researchers studying near-death experiences found that people who were clinically dead for a short time reported moments of clarity, like their awareness briefly sharpened as the brain faded. Scientists still argue whether consciousness is purely an emergent property of the brain, or if it's tapping into something larger, like a universal field of awareness. If it's the latter, maybe what you think of as your consciousness is just a temporary lens on a much bigger picture. When the lens breaks, the view might not disappear. It might just expand. And even if you're skeptical, there's a strange comfort in how much we don't know. We understand the physical process of dying, but what happens in those final seconds of awareness? That's still a mystery. Some people report vivid visions, flashes of light, feelings of floating, hearing voices of loved ones. Are those just chemical reactions in the brain, or are they glimpses of something beyond? Think about dreams for a moment. Entire worlds, sensations, and emotions unfold while you sleep, completely immersive, even though they're made only of your mind. If your brain can create that much mystery while alive, imagine what it might do in its final moments. And then there's the strange phenomenon of shared experiences at the edge of life. Families sometimes report that someone dying will see or speak to people who passed long ago, as if the boundary between here and there is thinning. Science calls it hallucination, but even doctors admit it's surprisingly common and oddly consistent across cultures. Here's another curious fact. Some quantum physicists suggest time might not be as linear as we experience it. If past, present, and future all coexist, maybe death isn't a leaving at all, but a return to a part of reality that was always there. Maybe your awareness just stops focusing on this narrow slice of existence and widens into something else. And even if nothing continues, isn't it intriguing that you can't be sure? There's a humility in admitting we don't have the full picture. For centuries, people believed the Earth was the center of the universe, until it wasn't. Maybe consciousness has similar surprises waiting. Even the simplest organisms, like single-celled creatures, have a basic responsiveness, a faint spark of awareness. If life carries even a trace of that, what happens to the spark when the organism dies? Does it truly go out? Or does it dissolve into the bigger fire of the universe? And think about this. Every single person who has died before you has stepped into that unknown. Billions of human beings, all with their fears and questions, all cross that line. If there was truly something terrifying waiting, wouldn't we feel the echo of it in some way? Instead, death remains quiet. If there is something beyond, it doesn't seem cruel. It seems soft, unhurried, patient. Even in the most skeptical view, there's still the possibility that your final thoughts might feel like an expansion, a strange clarity. People who've survived cardiac arrest often say they felt a sense of peace, not panic, as if the self loosens and slips into a state beyond fear. And here's the calmest truth. Whether consciousness continues or not, you won't be left hanging. You'll either dissolve into the deepest rest or discover something new. Either way, there's no suffering in it. So maybe you can approach death with a little curiosity instead of dread. Not as a void, but as a question mark. The ultimate unknown, waiting to reveal itself, or not. It's like standing at the edge of a foggy forest. You can't see past the first row of trees, but you know countless others have walked into it before. Some say it's just more forest. Others swear they glimpsed something magical. Either way, the forest is quiet. And in that quiet, there's no judgment. Just the soft unfolding of whatever comes next, or the gentle closing of everything. So let yourself wonder without needing an answer. Death doesn't owe you an explanation, and that might be its greatest kindness. It spares you the endless questioning. When the time comes, you'll find out, or you won't, and either way, it will be okay. Death ends all suffering. Every ache, every worry, every lingering regret dissolves in an instant. Pain needs a living body to feel it. Anxiety needs a working mind to spin its endless loops. Without those, there's no more discomfort, no more weight to carry. Whatever struggles you've endured, they all quietly fall away the moment life stops. Mainstream fact: the body's pain signals rely on the nervous system, and when that system shuts down at death, the capacity for pain shuts down with it. Quirky tidbit: even in extreme situations, the brain releases natural chemicals like endorphins and serotonin to soothe the final moments. Many people report an unexpected calm as the end nears, like nature's built-in anesthesia. Scientists still argue whether this peace is purely biological, or if it's the brain easing the transition in some deeper way. But they agree on the outcome. After death, there is no lingering suffering. The systems that generate it simply aren't there anymore. Think about the things that weigh you down now, the endless to-do lists, the old regrets that sometimes wake you at night, the ache of losing someone, the fear of failing. All of it is tied to being alive, to having a mind that clings to what's unfinished. Death untangles all of that. No more unfinished business, no more mental noise, just stillness. Even physical pain, as overwhelming as it can feel in life, cannot outlast the body. A headache, an injury, an illness. They're all tied to nerves firing signals. When those signals go dark, so does the pain. And maybe you've seen it happen for others. Someone who suffered for a long time finally letting go, and suddenly their face softens. Hospice workers talk about how even people in great discomfort seem to relax in the final breath. It's as if the body itself knows it's safe to stop fighting. There's a kind of mercy in that. No matter how bad things feel now, they're temporary. No storm lasts forever. At the very end, everything you've been carrying, grief, guilt, loneliness, slips off like a coat you no longer need. Even the smallest anxieties, the background hum you don't always notice, will vanish. The self that constantly evaluates, compares, hopes, and worries just isn't there anymore. There's no one left to suffer. Think about how you felt after a long, exhausting day. You finally collapse into bed, and in that moment, even before sleep, there's a huge relief. Death is like the ultimate version of that. No more pressure, no more trying, just release. Here's an oddly comforting fact. Many cultures have a word or phrase for death that translates to rest or sleep. In ancient Greek, it was hypnos, the same root as hypnosis, a gentle state of letting go. Across history, people sense this deep connection. Death isn't chaos, it's quiet. And isn't it strange how we cling to pain while alive? We replay old arguments, relive bad days, hold on to things we wish we could change. But when death comes, all those loops stop. It's the one guarantee that the noise in your head won't last forever. Even suffering that feels endless in life, chronic illness, heartbreak, depression, meets its natural limit. Death is the line where all of that ends, not because it's fair, but because the mechanisms that create it simply stop. You can even see the same pattern in nature. A storm can rage violently, tearing through everything in its path, but eventually it runs out of energy. Then the sky clears, and there's calm again. Death is that calm, inevitable after every storm. And think of how freeing that is. No matter how tangled your life might feel, no matter what mistakes you've made or what pain you've carried, there's an end point. A moment where everything softens, quiets, disappears. Even if you're afraid of the unknown, you can trust this. Whatever else death is, it is the end of hurting. It is the end of effort. It is the end of the restless "what next?" that follows you through life. So in a way, death isn't the enemy of life. It's the end of life's enemies. Pain, fear, regret, they all dissolve there. And maybe, if you look at it this way, death is a kindness. It doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't punish. It simply says, you've done enough. You can rest now. So let that thought settle gently in your mind. Whatever you're feeling right now, whatever aches or worries still cling to you, they won't last forever. None of them can. When the final moment comes, it will be soft, and it will be free. It already happened, and it was okay. From a timeless perspective, your death isn't a looming future event. It's something that has already unfolded, like a page already written in a book. And yet, here you are, breathing, safe in this moment. Doesn't that tell you something? That even if death has already come and gone in the grand scheme of time, it didn't erase you in the way you fear. Mainstream fact: physics suggests time is not as linear as we perceive it. In Einstein's theory of relativity, past, present, and future all coexist, like a vast landscape you move through rather than a single road. Quirky tidbit? Some scientists call this the block universe idea, where every moment that has ever happened, and ever will happen, still exists somewhere in the structure of reality. Scientists still argue whether your experience of time is just your brain's way of organizing events, rather than an absolute truth. If they're right, then your birth, your life, and even your death are all happening at once. From that view, you're not really moving toward an end. You're already part of the whole story, fully intact. Think of it like watching a movie you've seen before. The ending is already there, unchanging. But while you're watching, you're still immersed in the unfolding moments. Just because the last scene exists doesn't ruin the one you're in now. Your life works the same way. The ending doesn't cancel the middle. And here's a strange comfort. The version of you that dies isn't the version of you that's alive right now, listening to these words. The present you is here, experiencing this breath, this moment. That future you is already gone. And if it's already gone, and you're still here, then clearly, it was okay. There's even a quiet beauty in knowing you're living in a kind of echo. Every heartbeat you feel now is a ripple that time has already made. You don't have to fear what's already woven into the fabric of existence. Remember how you were before you were born. There was no pain, no fear, no waiting, just nothingness, and you didn't suffer it. Death is just returning to that state. And if you've already been there, in the infinite stretch before life, you already know it's harmless. You were fine then. You'll be fine again. And maybe you felt this in smaller ways. Think of a big change in your past, a move, a breakup, a loss. Before it happened, you worried endlessly. But looking back now, it feels distant, almost unreal, as if it belonged to someone else. Death is like the ultimate version of that. From the view of eternity, it's just one quiet shift among countless others. Here's another way to see it. Imagine you're a single note in a song. That note begins, resonates, then fades. But the song as a whole still exists, whole and unbroken. Even after your note ends, it's still part of the music. So when you think, one day I will die, remember, it's already true in the big picture. And yet you're here, living, which means death doesn't erase what it touches. It simply folds it into the whole. There's even a soft humor in it. You're afraid of something that's already behind you. From the view of time itself, you've already crossed that threshold. And here you are, still part of the universe, still existing in memory, in matter, in all the quiet ways life continues. And if that thought feels too abstract, bring it closer. Right now, you're safe. Right now, you're breathing. Right now is all that ever really exists. The future isn't here yet. The past isn't gone. It's all one continuous moment. So you don't have to brace yourself for death like it's a train barreling toward you. You're already inside the whole timeline. You've already touched the end without even noticing. And because you didn't notice, it couldn't have been so bad. Think about how often you've worried about something, only to later laugh at how unnecessary the fear was. That's exactly how death will be. Nothing to fear, because once it arrives, there's no you left to worry. So let yourself breathe a little softer now. The story is already written. You don't have to control the ending. You don't even have to know it. It's already happened in the only way it ever could, and it didn't break you. And in that realization, there's peace. Because what you fear is not waiting for you in some dark future. It's already part of the tapestry of what's always been. So let go of the weight. Death is not an enemy, but the quiet return home. Let these thoughts drift with you until you slip gently. And now, as your thoughts slow and your body feels heavy with calm, imagine yourself as part of the vast, endless quiet. No fear, no rushing, no questions left to answer. Just the soft rhythm of your breath, the gentle hum of the universe holding you the way it always has. You are not lost. You are not ending. You are simply returning to where you've always belonged. Let that comfort settle deep in your chest like a warm blanket. There's nothing left to resist. Only stillness, only peace, only rest. Sweet dreams.